Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today is 16th June 2020, the month of Shawwal 1441, which is coming to an end slowly. Dear children, I hope you are fine and well. Alhamdulillah, you have started now, as you can see on the screen, the purple colored book, which is part 3. This is part 3. So Alhamdulillah, this is great progress. I hope, children, that you are working hard and sitting to learn at home every day before your lesson starts on Zoom. Children, if you look at the screen, this is the conclusion so far. This is the conclusion so far. You've done letters and words containing, if you look on the screen, a fatha, kasra, and dhamma. So come on, children, let's read this together. How do we read this? What's in the green circle? How do we read that? We read it with as a. How do we read this? A. And the second one, come on, how do we read it? E. E. No stretching, no stretching, no overstretching. And the last one with a dhamma, how do we read it? U. How do we read this with a dhamma? U. Let's do the next line now. So let's read this one, the one with a fatha basically. So, ja. How do we read this? Ja. This is basically ja. I've just highlighted it for you. Come on, children. Ja. The next one is G. How do we read the next one? G. This one in the middle. And the last one with a dhamma. Come on, children. Ju. Ju. Now let's look at the last one. How do we read this? They have shaded it in green for you. La. And the next one, li. And the last one, lu. So I hope you've got the hang of this. And we've also covered words containing fatha, kasra, dhamma, or a mixture of them. So let's look at this first example. Let's look at this first example. I'll just make it bigger. Come on, children. Let's read this example. Ha, si, ba. Ha, si, ba. Come on, children. Let's do it again. So let's start off from here. Ha, si, ba. Ha, si, ba. Excellent. Now let's look at this second example there. Let's make it a little bit bigger. There's a fa and a ta and a ha. There's a dhamma, then a kasra and a fatha. So how do we read this? Fu, ti, ha. Fu, ti, ha. Very easy. And the last one, let's have a look at this. Ba. Come on, let's start from here. Ba, la, di. Ba, la, di. So no stretching. What we don't want is you pray ba, la, di. No, no stretching. Ba, la, di. Ba, la, di. Like that. Our new lesson is now going to start by looking at letters which have got 2 fathas. How many? 2 fathas. So for example, I'll give an example. You've got this alif. If you put 1 fatha, how do we read this? Let me make it bigger for you. How do we read this, children? A. Come on, children, let's do it again. A. But now we are going to look at words that have not got 1 fatha but 2 fathas. How many? 2. So the sound will change. That's what we need to remember. So I'll write this again. Let me just write this again. This is a in blue. but the letter in green has got two fathas. That's not a. How do we say that? That's what we are going to look at. So a letter which has got two fathas, you call it basically a letter with Fathatayn. You call it Fathatain. For example, alif has got Fathatayn on top of it. So that's the word. Do remember it. When a letter has got two fathas, the two fathas, you call them Fathatain. Let's now have a look at some examples. So on the screen, you can see an alif with a fatha. How do you read this? Come on, children. How do you read this? Come on, let's say it again. Now let's change it. So we got alif, and this time we are going to put Fathatain. What are we going to put? Fathatain. So how do we read this one in red? Come on, how do we read this? Come on, children, how do we read this? Say after me. So the one in blue, let's read that. How do we read this? And when you put another fatha, i.e. now you've got Fathatain, you read it how? How do you read this now? Come on, children. Let's now look at another example. So now we've got on the screen a dal with a fatha. So come on, children, how do we read this? Come on, guys. How do we read this? Da. Come on, let's say it again. Dal with a fatha. Da. Come on, loudly. Da. Now I'm going to put another fatha. And what you've got to remember, that when we add two fathas to a letter, the way it's written, it changes. So we have the two fathas and we also have an alif here. That's how it's written. Let's just make it a little bit smaller. So that's how it's written. I will write it one more time again. So you've got the dal, you will have the two fathas, and you'll also have an alif at the end. So how do we read this? Come on, let's just make this big. Done. Come on, children, how do we read this? Done. And if I take away the alif and one fatha, let's take it away. How do we read this? Da. Come on, children, how do we read this? Da. Now let's put the fatha back again. So we've got Fathatain now. And let's put the alif back on. How do we read this? Come on, done. How do we read this? Done. Let's look at another example now. So we've got the letter on the screen. What letter is this? Come on, children, tell me. What is this? Fa. Come on, loudly. Fa. So let's put a fatha on the fa. How do we read it now? Fa. Come on, children, how do we read this? Fa. Now, what we are going to do is, we're going to get the fa. Let's put it here. And we're going to put two fathas. And if you remember what I told you, what happens is, when you have got two fathas, the letter, it's written with an alif. It's written with an alif. So if you notice on the screen, there, let's put the alif here. So that's how you write it. Let me write it again, once more time. Let's just rub it off again. There. And now, let's write it again. So that's how it's written. Can you see? So this is a fa with Fathatain. So let's just look at this first, the one in the green box. How do we say the one in the green box? Come on, fa. Come on, fa. And the one in this blue box, how do we say it? Fun. Fun. So I hope you can see the clear difference, that the one in the green box, which is this one, we say f. What do we say? F. And the one in the blue box, we say fun. Fun. So the sound changes. When you have got two fathas on a letter, the sound, it changes. Let's look at another example. So on the screen, you can see a letter. What letter is this? Let's just make it a bit bigger for you. Come on, children. You should know this letter. It's a noon. What is it? It's a noon. And when you put two dots on, it becomes a ta. And if you put three dots on, it becomes a tha. Okay? And if we remove these dots and then we put a dot at the bottom, it becomes a ba. And if you put two dots at the bottom, so let's just take this dot off and put two dots, 1 and 2, it becomes a ya. Okay, so let's go back to our original letter, which was a ta. So there we are, we've got a ta. Let's put a fatha on this. How do we read this, guys? Come on, ta. Come on, guys, how do we read this? Ta. Now, let's write this with two fathas. So let's put the ta here with the alif. That's the dots, and that's Fathatayn. How do we read this? The word in the letter in black. Tan. Come on, children. How do we read this? Tan. Come on, loudly. How do we read it? Tan. And if we just have a ta with a fatha, ta. How do we read that? Ta. So, children and parents, part 1 of this video has now finished. It might be a good idea to start again and watch this again and have a look at the examples. We are now going to start from this point onwards, part 2. Part 2 is going to start from here. In part 2, we are going to look at full mouth letters with two fathas. So you might want to leave part 2 for now and come back to it tomorrow and watch part 1 again. And if you want to continue, you can continue. So let's start part 2. So these 7 letters which you can see on the screen, we call them what we call full mouth letters. So let's just take the first example, kha. There we are, kha. So we don't say ka, we say kha, kha. So children, come on, let's practice this. Kha. And then we have the next letter, sad, sad. And then again we have dad. Dad is a full mouth letter. Then we have number 4, ghain. We don't say gan. What do we say, children? Ghain. Come on, children. Ghain. And so on. So now let's look at these letters with a fatha and then Fathatayn. Two fathas. So on the screen you can see a letter with a dot and the dot's at the top and it's one dot. Come on. What letter is this, children? Kha. Come on, kha. So let's put a fatha on this. How do we pronounce it now? Kha. Kha. This is not g or g or whatever. Kha. Kha. And now let's change this letter which has one fatha. Let's put two fathas on. Let's put Fathatayn on. Fathatayn. So as you can see, there you are, we've got a kha with two fathas and you got to write it with an alif. How do we say this? Come on, children. Khan, khan. So when you had just one fatha, it was, look at the bottom in the red box, kha, kha. And this one, the one in the green box, khan, khan. So let's do the red box again. Come on. The red box, how do you read it? Kha. And the green box, khan, khan. So what we don't want you to read is kan, kan or something like that. That's a completely different letter. So this is a ghain with a fatha. So how do we read this? Not g, but a full mouth. Now let's write it with two fathas. So there we are. So how do we read this? The one in the red box. How do we read it? Come on, children. Ghan. Let's read the one in the green box now. Come on, how do we read that? The one in the green box. Gh. And the one in the red box, which has got Fathatayn, how do we read that? Ghan. So it's got to be full mouth. Ghan, not gun. Ghan. Let's look at one more example from full mouth letters. So this is a small qaf. Come on, children. What letter is this? Come on, let's look at it. Make it bigger. Qaf. It's got one dot. Sorry, it's got two dots. Qaf. And if it's got one dot, like at the bottom, it will be a fa. Okay, it will be a fa. Let's just take that off. So this is off. What is this? Off. Let's now put a fatha on it. So this is a qaf with a fatha. How do you say this? What we don't want to do is, we don't want to mix up this full mouth letter with, for example, the small kaf. This one in the green box, it's k, much lighter, k. And the one in this red box is Come on, children, So now let's look at qaf with two fathas, with Fathatayn. So there you are. You've got qaf there with two fathas. So come on, how do we say this? Qan. Come on, children, how do we say this? Qan. So what we don't want to say is kan. That's a small kaf. That's this letter here, the one in blue. This is a kaf. This is the one in the red box is a qaf. It's a qaf. So when you've got two fathas, how do you say it? Come on, children, let's make it bigger for you. Qan. How do you say it? Qan. Let's look at one more full mouth letter. The letter on the screen, it's a dad. It's a dad. Come on, children, say it loudly. Dad. If you remove the dot, it becomes a different letter. Sad, which is also a full mouth letter. Sad, not sad, sad, okay? And if you put the dot back on, let's put it back on, it becomes a dad. So let's put a fatha now. So how do we read this? Da. Okay, not da. Da, if I'll just write it at the bottom here, this is a dal with a fatha, da. This is a da. This letter in the green box, it's different. Da. So it's a full mouth letter. Da. Now let's look at it with two fathas. There we are. We've got a dad and it's got two fathas. So how do we read this? Dhan. So we're not going to pray done like here. This is a dal with two fathas. That's done. This word at the bottom in the red box is done. What is it? Done. This one in the green box, it's full mouth. Dhan, like that. So I hope parents will practice with their children. The best way is to get a whiteboard, and on that whiteboard you simply write down a letter. For example, you can put a ba, stick a fatha on, get your child to answer, what is this? Ba, and then change it to a ba with two fathas. What is it now? Ban. The best way to do it is to write the small letters. So for example, what letter is this? You ask your child, it's a sin. So you just write the letter first. So they'll recognize the letter first. That's number one. Then that same letter, you write it again, but with a fatha. So sa. And you can do a bit of enrichment as well. You could remove the fatha, put a kasra on, si, and then put a dhamma on, su. And then as stage 3, you put down the Seen with 2 fathas. Come on, children, what is this? Sun, sun, sun. So basically, parents, you must practice. Practicing is very important because this transition is very important. This transition where you have where you don't have 1 fatha but you have 2 fathas, what we call Fathatayn. It's very important, and a little bit of practice every day with 5, 6, 7 letters, but quality, not quantity, it will make a huge difference. At the same time, parents, from Easy Steps Part 2, please do practice randomly 3-letter words. For example, let me just write a word here. So for example, we've got the word khuliqa, khuliqa. So very important that children get this right, because this is now revision. We've done this, we've covered this. We have been looking at this sabak for several weeks now. So what your child needs to do is read every letter first step by step. Khu, li, qa. And the second time it's got to be fluent. So I'll start again, first slowly. Khu, li, qa, khu, li, qa. So second time is got to be fluent. This is really important, and this is still a priority and objective. So with Fathatayn, with 2 fathas, we will also be, inshallah, focusing on this. Jazakallah. Assalamu alaikum. I hope this video has been of benefit. Like I mentioned, do revisit it several times. It will help you as well. And inshallah, through that, you will be able to help your child. Jazakallah. Assalamu alaikum.